Welcome to the explainer. So picture this. You're scanning a target and you find an open port. Port 3306 MySQL. Now for a lot of people that looks like a front door just begging to be kicked in. But today we're going to talk about why that first instinct is very often a trap and what that open port is really trying to tell you. Right, so you've run your scan and there it is, clear as day. Port 3306 is listening. You've got a potential way in. The million-dollar question is, what's your next move? Do you charge right in? Or is this open port maybe a bit of a distraction?
You know, for many of us, seeing that open port triggers an immediate, almost Pavlovian response. The instinct is just to start hammering away at it, but as we're about to see, this is often a huge trap, one that can waste an unbelievable amount of your time and energy for basically nothing.
I mean, we've all seen this tactic. Maybe we've even done it ourselves. You find the port and you just start throwing the kitchen sink at it, right? Username lists, password lists, the latest and greatest exploits. This whole approach assumes that the port is a front door. But what if it isn't a door at all? Okay, this is where we need to make a really crucial mental shift. We've got to stop thinking like a brute force attacker with a battering ram and start thinking more like a patient investigator. You know, a detective piecing together a really complex case. And this quote it gets to the absolute core of it. We have to treat that open port not as a command to attack, but as a clue that has context. It's just one piece of a much, much bigger puzzle, and it has a story to tell if we're just willing to slow down and listen. This chart just lays out the two paths so perfectly. On one side, you've got the hammer. It's all about blind effort, direct attacks. It sees the door, and the only question it asks is, how do I get in? But then over here, you have the detective, patient, focused on correlation and context clues. The detective sees a clue and asks a much more powerful question. What does this tell me? It sounds a little counterintuitive, I know, but slowing down to investigate almost always gets you to your goal faster. Just blindly attacking a visible service like this is often the least efficient path you can take. Patient correlation, that's the real key. Now, every good detective needs a toolkit, right? But ours isn't filled with lockpicks and crowbars. No. Instead, it's focused on tools and techniques for gathering evidence and understanding relationships, not for forcing our way in. So this brings us to our first major decision. You see the open MySQL port, and you probably see some web services running on the machine. Apache, Nginx, something on port 80 or 443. So where do you even start? Do you focus on the database service itself? Or do you start by digging into that web stack? And the answer, almost always, is to start with the web applications. Why? Because they give you the context. They're the reason that database even exists in the first place. The web stack is going to tell you the database's story long before the database ever will. So what does this look like in the real world? Well, before you even try to connect to that MySQL port, you should be digging through the web stack for what the source material calls paperwork. That means you're reading the app's documentation, you're hunting for default credentials, you're looking for config files with database connection strings. You're just trying to understand what the application does. Heck, you might even stumble on some forgotten admin panel that just hands you the keys to the kingdom. Okay, so you're gathering all these little clues from the web stack. How do you actually start putting them together into a solid theory of attack? How do you know when you have enough evidence to actually make a move? Well, you follow a pretty simple four-step process. Step 1, you see the port. That's your initial observation. Step 2, you check the stack. That means digging into those web apps. Step 3, you hunt for relationship clues. How does the web app talk to the database? And finally, Step 4, you score your confidence. And all of this work leads you to creating a priority score. Now, this isn't some random guess. It's a calculated rating based on the evidence you've gathered. And it helps you answer that one critical question. How likely is it that attacking MySQL directly is the best use of my time right now? And what you'll find typically is that on these kinds of systems, the priority score you come up with is pretty low, maybe a 2 or a 3 out of 10. That score is telling you that the port is an important signal, sure, but its real value is in how it connects to everything else. It's not the treasure itself, it's just a big X on the treasure map. This entire evidence-first approach, this whole detective mindset, it all leads us to a final and really critical realization about where the real vulnerability is almost always hiding. And this brings us to probably the most important takeaway of this whole thing. The real story, the use case for that MySQL instance, is hiding in the application's paperwork, not in the service banner.
The secret to getting in isn't in the MySQL version number. It's buried in the documentation, the config files, and the forgotten features of the web app it was built to serve.
And when you get right down to it, this mindset isn't just about port 3036. It applies to any service, any clue you find on a system. So the next time you see what looks like an open door, just pause. Stop thinking like an attacker and start thinking like a detective. Ask yourself, am I trying to break down a door when I should really be looking for the key? Thanks for watching.